Did Paul lie to Agrippa? Does Paul want Edomites in chains, yes or no?
Worship I, the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets.
He believes all things that are written in the law and the prophets. Get Obadiah again. When have we done violence?
Stop.
I said you advocate violence towards the other. Do you believe you'll be able to murder your slaves in the kingdom?
In heaven, all nations will be in subject to the Israelites.
So
in heaven, all nations will be in subject to the Israelites.
So
he's an agent trying to get us to say something he can put on the video.
doesn't he say, I wish you were a Christian except for these chains? Doesn't he say, I wish you were a Christian? Doesn't he say, I wish you
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahawah, BaHa, YAHAWASHI, BaHa, RAWCHAA, QADASH, and double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well, and salute to you other elders and brethren, you fellow believers of this faith, and shalom to the elect, hopefully elect shalom. So this is a little bit older video, and I believe I even did a similar response, and I know brothers went in on it and did, I'm sure, videos on this, but it popped up again, and I said, well, I'm going to go back into this situation with Agrippa. Now the elders of and Achaim, brethren of Dallas, they dealt with Vocab Malone on a spiritual level, let's say that. You know, everything is a time and a season. So they dealt with him. Now, mind you, he's by his microphone, so you couldn't really hear as much, the brothers really giving answers. And then, as Elder Yashawama was saying, they try to get you to say something so they can put it up in a clip, or they have some form of Christian scripture that they can pull out that doesn't hold relevance to what we're talking about. So anyway, he asked, can we kill slaves? Well, they're slaves, but he said in the kingdom of heaven. So in the kingdom of heaven, we're going to want order, and there's things that must be done to obtain order, and the world would be at peace. But Edom, it says it in Obadiah, and that's what the elder also brought out. It's right in the scriptures. What's going to happen? It's right in the scriptures. And let's say you're saying it's radical. Well, the Most High is radical, because the Most High has done a lot of killing. He's doing a lot of killing, and there's a lot of killing to come. Right? Just what it is. Look at all the stories of the Israelites and what they did. Somehow, he doesn't believe Malachi 3 and 6. But anyway, that's another video. I want to touch on this Agrippa. Now, going back into Agrippa a little bit more, his name was Herod Agrippa II. And we'll get a little commentary. That's what I'm going to read mostly. But I will read what he pulls out, so we'll see. Right? Now, we all know that Apostle Paul was using guile, and he said, well, was Apostle Paul lying to him? Well, not really either. Neither was he lying or telling the truth. It was just straight guile. It was questions answered. Let's read it. Acts 26 and 27. King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? With a question marks. I know that thou believest. Now I'm going to go here, because as I read on in commentary, you're going to understand why he's asking these questions. It says, then Agrippa said unto Paul, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only thou. Now, when you see that word thou, that can actually mean thee or even himself, right, in the Old English. But also all that hear me this day were both almost and altogether such as I am, except these bonds, almost and altogether. Some are not like Apostle Paul. They don't believe in the prophets. You had different Israelites. Well, that's why he was he was in trouble, right? So I want to go to a little commentary. It says, almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. At the cost of giving up a familiar, impressive text, it must be admitted that the Greek words cannot possibly bear the meaning which is thus, put upon them. The words run literally in or with or little thou persuadest me, and this may be completed by with little speech, with the labor or the little evidence. See Ephesians 3:3. This keeps coming up, right? So I'm going to read this real quick. Then I'll go back. Ephesians 3, I think it's, let me see what it says. A mystery or something. This is the mystery made known to me by revelation, as I have already written briefly. That was another translation, but it's pretty much to the point. Okay, let's go back. It says, we have precisely the same phrase rendered in few words. Agrippa's words accordingly are the expression not of a half belief, but of a cynical sneer. Thou art trying to make a Christian of me with very few words on a very slender grounds, right? It goes on to say, we may trace perhaps the effect of Roman associations. These certainly were Christian communities at Rome at this time of Rome. It also says, it may be noted that the prominent English versions, Wycliffe gives in a little thing Tyndale, and the Kramer somewhat. The Rimish and Little Geneva agrees with the present version in almost. The meaning somewhat is a little is tenable, a tenable one. So you get the point. So you got the different translations. That's what I've also went into. So Acts 26 and 28, this Agrippa was the son of the other Herod, of whom we hear in the Acts as a persecutor. This one appears from the other sources to have had the vices, but not the force of character of his bad race. He was weak and indolent, which means, when I looked it up, means lazy, and a mere hanger-on of Rome, to which he owed his kingdom, and to which he stoutly struck during the tragedy of the fall of Jerusalem. So there's a lot to go into, but to sum it all up, this Agrippa, Paul knew he could use guile with him. Paul already knew that he was not forceful, right? So he was in a situation that he can use he could play a chess match with a man who was going to be lazy, who was not going to really put forth the effort. That was the difference with this Agrippa, right? Then his father, let me go here, look up this. So that's a lot of history on it. Herod Agrippa II, officially named Marcus Julius Agrippa, and sometimes shortened Agrippa, was the last ruler of the Herodian dynasty, right? So let's go back. So we can clearly see that what Paul was doing is absolutely using guile, and I'm going to show you the original take on what was actually originally said. It says, without supplement, Ephesians 3:3, these commentators keep pulling this up. With little thou persuaded me to be a Christian. The sarcasm is meant to say, thus summarily, thus brui manu, which is going into the Greek. It means you will not manage to win me over with your Christianity. So you can see how you had universalism is still instituted in the scriptures, right? Even the very older translations that was about getting people, converting people, right? But at that time, it definitely wasn't about converting all nations. Paul was only talking to the Israelites. So when you see this here, when it talks about Agrippa, this was pure mockery, right? That's what Agrippa was saying. Thou almost persuaded thee to be a Christian. Meaning he knew he wasn't going to be a Christian. He was, as we read in the beginning, or if you read at the top of the chapter, he was, an expert in the laws, right? And knew, the traditions of the Israelites, right? So you can imagine being locked up in jail, and you have a man of another nation, say a so-called Arab man, and we all in there, and they learn over the years how we operate. And then I get in some form of trouble, and you're cool with him. So you go up, he's lazy. He's not going to put forth any effort. So you go up, because you're about to be, they're trying to kill you. And he's going to go where the power is, right? He understands what the scripture says in Proverbs. When a man's ways please the Lord, he make even his enemies to be at peace with thee. Okay, I'm going to read a little more. All these commentaries say pretty much the same thing. Almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. But little persuasion, thou wouldest fain make me a Christian. Okay, it would seem therefore represents Agrippa's word more clearly with little labor, right? What it's saying, it goes on to say, implies that the king despised the attempt which had been made to convince him and mocked at the language of St. Paul, and so readily taken for granted. So what they're saying is when Apostle Paul said that, and he knew he was trying to play him, those exact words, when he said, thou almost madest me to be a Christian, when you really go into it, it never really said that. It said, you will not manage to win me over with your Christianity. That's what it actually really said. It never said that thou almost persuadest me to be a Christian. Of course, the writers and the translators, over time, they changed that and switched it, and that's what it came out to be. But it still has the same relevance. With mockery, with the cynical sneer, as they said, Like if I was an expert and I knew Islam, but I knew I'm a Hebrew Israelite, but my business is to watch these Muslims, and somebody comes to me and say something, and I say, well, man, you almost trying to get me to be a Muslim. You trying to make me a Muslim. In fact, those are some of the other translations said that. You're trying to convert me to be a Christian, right? But here, it's set up for you preachers and you people who don't do research. Now, we take time, sometimes some things is in due time. We take time and we look over things and we figure it out. This is an old video. So, sitting down and going over it, us at Great Millstone, we study all this stuff, We study all these things. Almost persuaded me to be a Christian. Here's another one. The king thought I'm just now reading this. To speak contemptuously, it would be more true to say that there was a motion towards good to him with one Acts 26:27. It doesn't say much on here. It doesn't say much. It says here, with little persuasion, this saying of Agrippa is obscure and variously explained. There's a lot in here, but I can't read all of that. A little thou persuadest me, rendering almost must reject it. almost must be rejected, being without sufficient authority. The phrase is little, is adverbial, and means in brief. Summarily, we may supply Payne's talk or talk. That's pretty much to the point. But there's a lot in here on this. So the bottom line is, what was actually said, and Apostle Paul knew, and it was a battle of like a chess match. He knew this wasn't a hardcore Agrippa, or if it was a different one, he would have probably went at him a little bit different. But the Lord set it up for Apostle Paul to be in that, in that position. And this is why he said what he said, because they were, he was trying to escape a serious situation, and he knew this was a lazy, joking Agrippa. Right? This Agrippa was like one of those, like if you have a teacher in school and you get a substitute, you got a hard-ass teacher, and then his son or something or nephew comes in there and he's a joker and a laugher. Well, you know what? You can get over on him. You can play like you into what he into. Right? There's all kinds of things you could do to play, to play him. Everybody knows it. Everybody's pretty much done it. You got people who got parents. The father is tougher or the mother is tougher. You go to the parent that's not as tough, to get that break. And this is all you see here. And ultimately, let me read the original. Let me go back to the old 1300s. It says, Pool sawed, why desire, something anentis, God, both little and great, not only thee, and see, some says thou, and then some says thee, but all these that here into this day to be made such as YM. It's hard to understand, right? So going back to the beginning when he said, believest thou, King Agrippa, to the prophets? He was putting Agrippa on the spot. And he was winning him over. So you had a chess game going back and forth. That's why he asked him, believest thou, King Agrippa, to be the prophets? Right? Let's go back. Let me see. I'm in another translation. Let me go see what the original one said. These translations for us to understand a little bit easier. I'm not taking away from the King James. It just sometimes when they word it, they'll put a word in there that'll make it sound, it'll change everything because of the Old English. It says, then Agrippa said, it says 27, King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? I know thou believest. What does that sound like? It sounds like exactly what's getting ready to happen. Right? You gotta, that's what it is. It was a tactical, word of wits. That's all I have on that. Shalom.